a podcast about amazing people from an incredible state. Amazing Arizonans with Mike Broomhead.
Back for another episode of Amazing Arizonans and a very recognizable person, Captain Coyote, Shane Doan. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
I've been looking forward to this conversation for such a long time. There's so much I think I almost have to fill you in on. I became a hockey fan because of you. I didn't know anything about hockey. Grew up in Southwest Florida. Moved to Arizona. Not two big places known for hockey until you guys came here. But I remember going to games and watching and being such a fan. I went out and bought the gear and started going to stick time, figuring how hard could it be?
It's a little hard.
It's a little harder than I imagined it was going to be. I thought, you know what? I was a speed skater, roller skating when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
How hard could it be?
Yeah. It's a little different.
Yeah.
But if you can roller skate, you got the general gist of the.
That's skating.
Yeah.
There's a difference between trying to hit a puck and changing directions that fast. So I know I had such a new respect for the game of hockey, and I became a fan, a very casual fan, but such a fan of yours. I want to start off with the dichotomy because, you know, basketball is a contact sport. Mm-hmm. Hockey's a collision sport. Yeah. It's a violent sport.
Yes, it is.
And a lot of things are settled on the ice, and we all know about that's a part of the game.
Yep, 100%.
But there's a genuine respect for everybody involved.
Yeah.
You are genuinely one of the nicest people in sports that anybody knows. How does that personality match up with the tenacity we saw on the ice?
Oh, man. Thank you. And you know what? I believe this with all my heart, that everything I do heartily as unto the Lord, not unto men. And there's an element of that, well, if that's what I'm going to have to do, then that's what I'm going to do. And it's a part of our game. So it's not, I didn't look at it as anything other than that. And there's a story I always tell about one of my best friends. I ended up fighting one of my best friends. He actually introduced me to, because of him, I met my wife. And I ended up fighting him on the glass next to my in-laws. My in-laws were sitting on the glass. It was the first game that he'd ever played in Vancouver, and I was playing for the Coyotes, and we ended up fighting. And it was out of respect that we fought each other. Like, he ran over one of my teammates. I kind of tapped him. He turned and looked at me, and it was like, are we going to do this? And all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, we're going to do this. And he's a big man. He's 6'4", and he's a big guy. And we ended up fighting. But it was a total respect thing. Like, it wasn't, if he'd kind of brushed me off and told me I wasn't worth it, then it would have been a disrespectful thing. So for me, when I played, it was more of a respect thing for the game and for the people that, hey, I'm going to go as hard as I can because I think you can beat me, and I'm going to have to try my hardest to beat you.
It is such an intense sport from a fan's point of view. I grew up a football fan, football coach. I love the game of football, but there's a break between every play. There's a lot of tension, but there's a break between every play. You can take your eyes off the ice for half a second and miss a goal, miss something spectacular. Is it that intense in the game? Is it always that intense in the game for you?
Yeah. I think that's the best part of our game. The part I love the most of our game is kind of the beauty and the rawness and the brutality at the same time of it. Is it's fluid, it's smooth, everything's going good until a collision, like you said, happens, and then that intensity that you live in for the whole time. You get. At the beginning of my career, we didn't have commercial breaks. And so it was never, but at commercial breaks, you kind of can be like, okay, they kind of go to their bench, we go to our bench. You have about 90 seconds, 100 seconds, or twice a period, or 3 times a period, where you kind of take a breather. But other than that, even in between whistles, like you take a shot, puck goes in the net, I drive the net, I stop in front, you bump me, I bump you. There's a whistle. It's like, okay, what's going to happen here? Nothing. You're trying to wait and see if there's anything more than that, and then you go line up, face off. I can take a run at you now. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so that part is great, and I love that. I agree. That's the best part of our game.
And from a fan standpoint, because I'm big on you win with grace and you lose with dignity. To watch even at the end of a horribly lost series from anybody, to at the end of the series to line up, sweaty and sometimes bloody, and still make sure everybody shakes hands. I think that's the ultimate respect. And that's what makes the game a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, and you know what? It's it keeps, and this sounds kind of weird, but the fighting and the confrontational side of our sport holds you accountable to that. Like if you start to be disrespectful, there's a consequence for it. And so I think that's why it kind of goes hand in hand, because it's weird. I had at the end of we lost to LA. The playoffs.
Bringing that up next. I was there.
Oh, I know. And so Dustin Brown and I'd be our friends, and we'd been friends off the ice.
I can't.
Yeah,
I can't deal with that.
and yet I want to kill him on the ice. Like on the ice.
I can't accept you're friends with him.
So that was a hard series to lose. For me, I knew that was as close as I was probably going to get to the playoffs, everything that happened at that moment. And Brownie just wanted to kind of explain to me what happened with the hit that happened right before. And as we're shaking hands, he's like, Donor, I was like, not. And all I said,
not now.
Not right now, Brown.
I remember it.
Yeah.
I remember it. And I was going to ask you about.
And he says, Donor, come on. And I'm like, not right now. And then the camera zooms in on me as I'm going, not right now. And that's all I'm saying is like, I just got to get through this lineup. I got to shake everyone's hand. And then I realized like, oh man, I just got to calm down. So then I'm trying to be extra gracious and kind to everyone. But to him at that moment, because we'd been intense and battled against each other, and he was their captain and I had been the captain, so it was intense.
But the way that ended, so there's a hit.
Yeah.
The referees don't call it. It's obviously a knee-to-knee hit.
Yes.
And I remember, do you remember what you did when that call didn't happen and the goal was scored?
Yeah, I did.
Do you remember whacking your stick into the...
Yeah, I did.
And because I didn't really know you that well, but I had seen you in so many situations where you had been... You were always the first guy on the ice, the last guy off the ice. You did every interview. You were always so gracious. That was the angriest I'd ever seen you. Is that the angriest you had been in a game?
I couldn't even see straight. Like I couldn't. And so the guy that got hit was Michael Roosevelt.
Yeah.
And Rosie and our boys had played together. And so Rosie and Oki and Derek Morris and I, we traveled together with our boys. And so I'd got to be really tight with Rosie. Not that you're not tight with all your teammates. I am. But it was Rosie who was the nicest gentleman. And to see it happen, I couldn't get myself to calm down. And not to pile on, right before that, they'd flipped the puck over the glass.
Yeah.
And there should have been a power play.
Right.
And the refs missed it. And I was like, how do you miss that? And now how do you miss this? And it kind of piled up, and the intensity of them. And hey.
Do you ever get an explanation from the referees? Are they as gracious to come in and say, we missed a call? Do they come in and say that to you?
There are some guys that are just, as gracious as, to the point where you're like, I got to work with the league. Colin Campbell brought me in to work with the league after I'd retired, and I got to meet a bunch of them and got to know them. They are guys that love the game and want to do the best job, and it's a fast game and they miss it. And there's a few guys that are just so gracious and like, hey, I missed it, Shane. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't see it. If I could have seen it, I would call it. But if I didn't see it, I can't call it.
Right.
And I appreciate that. And those guys were good. And I felt bad because I kind of had a meltdown after.
But see, here's the thing. I want to take people behind the scenes because I was in the locker room after.
Yeah.
I had a press pass then.
Yeah.
And which is really funny because I don't know anything about hockey, but I just wanted to be in the locker room. So I remember being in the room, and I think the word you used was uncle. I think when you're angry, you say uncle instead of what you're really thinking. But so this happens. This hit happens. It doesn't get called. Within seconds after that, they score the game-winning goal on your ice to go to the Stanley Cup Finals. You got to line up and shake hands. You got to watch them with that trophy on your ice.
Yeah.
Then you got to go in the locker room. Then you got to talk to the media.
Yeah.
And how do you process all of that? Because with all due respect to everybody else in that room, everybody wants to hear from you.
Yeah. That was a hard one because on top of it, I was 35, I think-ish at the time, right around there. 35, 36. That was the farthest I'd ever been. And there was a good chance we weren't getting that close again. Like, in my mind at that moment, I thought we were good enough that we'd have another chance, maybe a year or two, but I knew that they were getting slimmer and slimmer chances of me having any real. So that was going through my head. All I wanted to do was figure out a way to win a Stanley Cup. And then it was right there, and it got taken. And I remember walking in there and I was like, don't say anything, don't say anything, don't say anything. And then as soon as he cracked that door, like that's the problem. Like soon as I cracked the door of just let a little emotion out, it was like, oh no, I can't.
Yeah.
The door's open now and I can't get it back in. Oh, it was one of those weird kind of how did I get to this moment? And yet the more I was in the moment, the more that it just kind of started to get taken over. And I was trying to calm it down.
How long does it take you to get, you're never going to get over it. Mm-hmm. You're still talking about it. But how do you get past it? How long does it take where you are past it?
I don't know. I think it's one of those things that you kind of have to recognize. I struggled at the end of my career with just knowing my career was coming to, like, okay, now it's past. How do you move past on certain things? I took it, I started to try to focus on trying to figure out, well, what do I learn from this? And if I can learn something from this situation, then I feel like it's made me a better person going forward. Then I can move on. But if I just dwell on the fact that it hurt me, then I'm stuck in that moment. I have to figure out a way that I learned and improved from that person, I guess. That was my goal. And that was the only thing that could do, because I was such a... Anyways, yeah.
When you... But here's the interesting thing. Much like... And we're going to talk about some of the other great captains in sports around Arizona. But much like Larry Fitzgerald, there was a lot of talk of nobody would have blamed Larry at the end of his career if he had gone to a contender to try to win a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Nobody would have held it against you in Arizona if you said, I want to go play for a contender to win a cup. Mm-hmm. Everybody would have understood. What goes into that decision? Because your longevity here is part of why you're so loved.
Yeah.
But it's your play and who you are. What made you say, nope, I'm either going to do it here, or did you, in your mind, say, I'm either going to do it here or it's not going to happen?
At that point, I was pretty confident. And that summer, there was New York. I talked with New York and Vancouver and Philadelphia quite a bit, and a little bit to Toronto, quite a bit to the other three. And I thought about it, and I thought we had a chance in Arizona to win. Obviously, we didn't, and we never did. But I think, though, when you become the situation where you kind of have been around a long time, you know the management, you know the support staff, you know the people that are involved, you know the commitment and the sacrifices they've all made, you become more responsible, I think, for the organization than it felt like for me than others, in the fact that this was my family. Like Stan and Tony and Jason Rudy, the equipment staff, and then on the medical side with Serbs and Ermi and all those guys, Jimmy O'Neill and Rick Bronstein and Rich Nairn. Those are my guys that I do everything with. Like, those are the guys that I would do everything for and with. The strength and conditioning coaches, like, those are the guys that I love. I wanted to win with them too, as much as I wanted to win with my teammates, because I've seen the sacrifices they made. And I think that's when it starts to get hard. And I think that's, for me, it felt like, well, if we win here, it means way more. That was kind of the...
When we have a couple of friends in common, but one of them you may not know is my doctor, who used to be the team doctor with the Coyotes, Joel Sellers.
Oh, yeah.
And he has pictures all over the wall. And I had mentioned to him last time I saw him that you and I were going to get together. And he always says, I was there when he lost his first chiclet. That's what he calls it. And he remembers you being such a young player. Oh. But he goes back, when you go back that far with people,
yeah,
it's got to mean something to still have those relationships years later.
It does. You start going through like the people that you get to know. And I think it's unique here in the Valley in that it's a big city, but it's a small city too.
It is.
It really is. Like, especially in the hockey world, like that group of people that are fans, I bet you I've met just about every Coyote fan. Mm-hmm. Like, at some point or another, I've probably come across every Coyote, and I know them. Like, they get to know me. Like, if they're at the arena and if their kids play hockey, they've probably come and said hi.
Do you like that?
I love it. It's unique in the fact that you go to some of the cities in the north that are bigger hockey. You go into Chicago, there's 45 different rinks, and the NHL players are at, 2 of them. Well, here there's 5 rinks, and the NHL players are at all of them. So if you go to a hockey rink here, you're probably going to meet one of the players or see one of the players if you're there in the evening,
right,
or know someone that knows one of the players really well, because that's where they hang out. And because of that tight knit, I think it's a unique opportunity to really have success. And I think it's why you're starting to see some players start to come out of here that are good hockey players. Obviously, Austin Matthews is a guy that is a flag bearer and kind of carries the name for the state with young hockey players and prospects and great players. But there's some other guys coming, and it's exciting.
People that know professional sports in Arizona, people that know quality, talent, and personalities and character. Your name is synonymous with the Larry Fitzgeralds, and I know you're friends with Gonzo, Steve Nash, and I'm going to leave people out, even Goldschmidt for the time he spent here with the D-backs. These are names of people that are saying these are easy people to cheer for. When Gonzo was here, I asked him about what he says to young players now that he's the mentor. And he said almost exactly the same thing I've heard you say in the locker room and saying to people, we're privileged to play this game. And that's one of the messages he sends is we get to do something that millions of people would love to do.
Oh, yeah.
What is it about that leadership skill that says enjoy the moment, but be appreciative of the moment?
Well, the thing that blows me away the most is I think, and Gonzo does it in spades. Gonzo kind of, there's obviously Charles Barkley and KJ and the guys that were here that they obviously were incredible. But for me and my generation, Gonzo was a guy that set the standard for the way that you were to treat people and be off the ice. Mm-hmm. And then obviously I had hockey players with Keith Tkachuk and Jeremy Roenick and some of those guys that were great guys that I got. But Gonzo was that stable kind of there every day, did it right. And then what Larry's done is, I mean, he's such a superstar as an athlete and as a person.
And what he does off the field is amazing.
Oh, it's amazing. Those guys, but there's a humility that's real. It's not a facade. It's not fake. I always joke and laugh with guys that maybe don't joke. I get annoyed when guys like, I've worked so hard to get here. I'm like, I guarantee you, there's somebody out there right now that's 5'3", 115 pounds that would outwork you every single day of the week and do anything to have the frame, the ability, everything. So it has nothing to do with work. That's a given.
It's like Rudy. The movie, how that movie was so spectacular because he had nothing to work with but worked harder than everybody else.
And there are so many people that would do that given the opportunity that like Larry and Gonzo and I have been given. That you better be humble and you better be appreciative and you better be in the moment and you better enjoy the fact that you've been given a God-given blessing. And that's it. And I'm not saying you didn't work hard, but that's a given. Like, working hard isn't something you compliment yourself for. Working hard is like, well, that's what you do. Like, you work hard. And if you don't do that, well, then, I mean, and obviously there's guys that are so talented that they can get away with it. But I think that what makes Larry and Gonzo and Steve and the guys that you'd mentioned so special, I mean, those guys they've got that humility and that work ethic that goes with being talented.
Well, to your point, I was Pop Warner teammates, Pop Warner football with Dion. Deion Sanders and I.
That would have been
played 2 years together.
No way.
I watched him grow up. We're the same age. Played against my brother in high school football.
How's he going to do in Colorado?
I think he's going to do really well.
Did you see him the other night where you got all those guys?
Yeah.
I was loving that.
I like the fact that he's building a team where he wasn't mad that they fought. He was mad that some of the guys walked away from the fight. I think that he's going to get in college football. It's so important to get players to buy in and play for each other. If you can do that in college football, you can go a lot further. The talent of the body is a lot bigger than the talents of the individuals. And I think he's going to do really good things. But to watch him, even as a 12-year-old, he was a man among boys. But he had a work ethic. He's always been, for prime time and everything else, he was a humble guy and just worked hard. He was brash, and he made sure he lived up to it. And that work ethic and talent together.
That's what you have to have. You have those two things, and you throw in humility, so it's not about you. And that's so funny because we all know that. Like, we all see it and know it. Mm-hmm. But it's still like there's an element of the image that everyone wants to portray as kind of the brash look at me, but that's not what makes it successful. It isn't. It's the genuine humility, and I think you add those three things, and then I think that's what you go through every great player, and that's what they have.
Where does it come from with you? I know I've said this to you before, but I don't know if we've done it in this setting. Watching I think leadership is such a unique quality. So I remember watching games and watching you be the first guy on the ice for warm-ups, and I watch you stand there and wait until every other player leaves the ice, and I watch you flip pucks to kids on the other side of the glass. I watched you do all those things. Where does that attention to that kind of detail come from? In the biggest circumstances, too. I mean, big games, playoff games. Where does that come from, that mentality, that dedication? Who gave you that?
Well, I was blessed with incredible parents and an environment that I grew up in, and they taught me. I mean, it was not drilled. It was shown to me by so many people around me to be that everything I do heartily as unto the Lord. Like, that's just what you do, and if you do that, then the pressure's gone, and you just get to do it in a way that's real. And it doesn't mean you're going to do it right, because you're going to do a lot wrong lots, but that would be where the biggest thing. But it wasn't, and then it, like, my dad was just an example of it. There was no pretense about it. There's nothing like, it's what's right. So you do what's right. And when you do it, you love justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. Like, those, like, do justly, love mercy, walk humbly. That's what you do. And not in any way that's anything special. And trust me, there's lots of people that have seen me do, they're bad too. Like, I'm not by any, but it is something that was drilled into me or shown to me when I was young, and I'm very fortunate that happened. And I had one incident, though, that probably changed the most for me. Is I went to a Edmonton Eskimos football game when I was about 11 years old. My cousin took me, and he knew a player that played on the specialty teams. And I loved the CFL and the Eskimos, and so I'd go watch them. And then after the game, the guy played specialty teams, didn't play a lot, but I got to go down and meet him. So I walked down, met him. My cousin took me down. My cousin about 10, 15 years older than me. So he was like 26, and they're the same age. And we sat and talked, and he didn't say anything to me other than he said hello at the beginning. And I said goodbye, and as I turned to walk away, his name was Mike Withers, I think. And he's like, "Shane, I'll see you later." And the fact that he knew my name at that moment, I literally came home and told all my buddies that, like, in school, we're friends, like, we're buddies. And that little, I'm like, I still to this day can't believe that impact that had on me. And I think that was probably one of the things that changed me the most. Did I
tell you this story? I was just telling somebody in the building this story today. My moment.
Yeah.
I had rented a condo at Thompson Peak Parkway in Pima when I was going through a divorce. So I was living up in your hood.
Yeah.
And Saturday morning, I'm walking into the Safeway, and you're walking out of the Safeway. And you recognized me before I recognized you. And I thought, that's it. There's my moment. Shane Doan remembered my name. So it's so funny you told that story, because at the time I was fairly new in radio.
Yeah.
But I had been such a huge fan. We had met on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away. I walked away and said, Shane Doan knows my name. So you paid it forward after the guy remembered you.
There we go.
In Edmonton. But again, that's such an important thing, was an important thing to a lot of people, because we would all understand you do hundreds of interviews constantly with people, but yet you do make everybody feel like their interview and their question is important. I think that's a great trait.
Oh, well, that's... Yeah, well...
I can't imagine you do it every time, because I've heard some pretty dumb questions.
There has been... Walshy was always laugh, because someone would do an interview, and you'd be in some other building, and someone would ask you a question that there's like... something like that was a question that there was only one answer for it, and everyone knew what the answer was for it.
Yeah.
And they'd want you to expand on it, but I would be like, you just like, and I'm not, and it's usually when I'd lose, or if I was and I wasn't like grumpy but it would just be one would be yes, and it would be and they'd be like, and I'm like, no, that's all you're getting. And Walshy's like, ooh, okay, let's go on. Like it was funny because there's times when it gets away from you.
Let's talk about the next generation, because you were teammates with Tkachuk.
Oh yeah.
And the two of you are probably the two best Coyotes that ever played the game. I mean, you got to throw in Roenick in there
He's
as well.
The best. He's
but
the
I'm
best.
saying you guys are the Mount Rushmore of Coyotes. Are you guys? He's got a son immensely successful that is just tearing up the league.
Two of them.
Yeah,
two of them. They're just amazing.
And now you've got a son.
Yeah.
Is it better watching him, or was it better playing?
Oh, I full on have more joy watching him have success than I think I ever I think we're built to praise, and I think that when he does something and I'm probably not very good at expressing it to him enough. I do it when I'm by myself or with my wife and with all the kids. I have 4 kids, and when they do something special, I seem to get more excited for them, and it's way more anxious. Like that part, I was way better to play. Like I'm worried about whatever goes on in a game, like that can happen in a game before a game starts. I'm like, oh my goodness, I never had that. I was anxious when the games were starting. Like I knew that people were trying to hurt you, but it's like, I'll be fine. But now I'm anxious because I'm like, oh, come on, bud. You got to be good. You got to be good. You got to be good. You got to be. And then after the game, I'm like, oh, the joy and relief of the success I think it's better, but it's different because you've played. When you play, there is nothing like being in the competition.
Right. Whatever game it is.
Whatever. I don't care what game it is. And at the highest level of your it's funny, if your highest level is the NFL, then that's the best, that you enjoy that.
Right.
But if your highest level is high school football, that's the best. Like that, it is the same feeling at that level as it is when you're at your peak and you're competing and you're kind of losing, kind of winning, kind of losing, kind of winning, and you're going back and forth. There's something about that kind of on that edge of like, ooh, I don't know what's going to happen here. That's the best part to live.
Well, there's an old saying that says a father is the only man who will be genuinely happy when you are more successful than he is.
Yes, I agree. That's a really, really, really good point. I agree with that. Because that is something that's what everyone's dream is, I think, is Do you talk to Kachuk about his kids? Yeah, we texted.
And yours?
Yeah, we just texted 2 days ago. I was texting them about, my kids got me on TikTok. So
see, I don't have TikTok.
I don't have it either. I didn't even know. I don't know what my name is. I don't know anything. But
they got an account for you?
They'll send me stuff so that I can see and laugh at it. And someone sent me a thing of a Boston argument, 2 cars driving at each other, and they start yelling at each other, and it's F you back and forth, and it's just hilarious. And I sent it to Keith Yandel and to Keith Kachuk, and I was laughing. Another friend of mine from Boston, I was laughing. So then we got talking we're just about the boys, and I mean his boys. Brady is a beast of a man, and Maddie is just what he's doing offensively is so special, and Taryn, his daughter, is an incredible. She's playing, I think, field lacrosse in maybe Maryland or something like that. She's just an incredible. She might be the best athlete of the 3 of them. So. But yeah, we got talking, and he's asking about Josh, and he's a big fan of Josh. So.
He was Kachuk on the Coyotes. He was scary.
Oh.
Not me. I don't know. I mean, you know him. I don't know him as a human being. But on the ice, that was a scary guy.
Oh, and off the ice, do you know those guys that are like bullies that everyone loves?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how they pull it off, but they're capable of being like, he knows that he cares about everybody. But if there's a chink in your armor, he's going to poke it.
You've played with a couple of guys like that.
Yeah.
Bissonnette was not necessarily a quiet guy either.
No, he's not. He's not at all. And you're going to have to be ready. When we played downtown at Phoenix, there was so I was the youngest guy on the team for 3 years in a row, and I would sit down at the one end of the dressing room. And in order to go to the bathroom at the other end I had to walk this narrow, the dressing room was narrow because it was underneath the America West stands. So it was a narrow, long dressing room. So I had to walk past Keith Kachuk, Dave Manson, Jeremy Roenick, Rick Tocchet, Dallas Drake. And they would just ridicule you. And I would get up and be like, ooh, I don't have to go to the bathroom. I think I'm going to wait. And I'm like, no. And I would go outside the dressing room, into the hallway, run down the outside where the fans were, and back into the dressing room in my gear at the other end, and then back out that way so that I didn't have, and yet I love those guys. Like, they're some of my favorite humans on the earth. Like, they were unbelievable to me in the best way. But man, did they abuse you off the ice. It was so fun. And you miss that in the dressing room. I mean, any dressing room's like that. And
that's the question, because I've asked just about everybody. I've asked Gonzo, is the same thing, isn't that what you miss?
Yeah.
Practice is always tedious, or can be. The games, the travel, it's all part of the experience. But a lot of times it's that, and people don't understand unless you're in that setting ever. There's just something about that time together that's irreplaceable.
It is. And you know what? It's as important a piece of being a professional athlete as, like, people don't understand how hard it is to fit in a dressing room. Like, you fit in the dressing room, that carries a lot of weight, and you have a lot more comfort and ability to be successful. And it is the best. It's the non-stop, it's humbling, it's encouraging, it's terrifying, it's the safest place. It's like all these things that you're like, how can it be all of those? It is. I don't know how to explain it, but it's.
Is it weird now that when you walk into the dressing room, you're always welcome? I think you'd be welcome in any dressing room in the NHL. But it's got to have the feeling that it's not your dressing room anymore.
I remember walking out onto the ice. Teppo Numminen was the guy that I most wanted to be like. I love Teppo Numminen. I mean, him and Anne Moret were the classiest, gentlest, just good human beings. Teppo he was just robotic in his approach. He comes back to Arizona. He's retired. And I'm about to go onto the ice and practice. And I would give anything for Repo to come out onto the ice and come into the dressing room. And I'm like, but he's not allowed in. Like, he could never go back in. And I remember it's kind of like when they say, like, you ring that bell or you leave, like, you're never allowed back in. And it's the most exclusive, special club. And you can't buy your way in. You can't force your way in. It's either you get invited in. And if you're capable, you stay. And if you're not, you're out. And I don't know. It was one of those things as I was walking onto the ice. It was like emotional for me to be like, Teppo can't come. Like, he can't do this. And I would have given anything to have him come, like, put the gear on and come out, and he couldn't at that point. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's going to be me. And it happened like that. It was me.
Can we, because there's so many things I want to talk to you about, and we aren't going to have time for all of them, but when you approach the end,
yeah.
When did you know it was coming? Like, when did you resign yourself to it?
Yeah.
And did it change the way you approached anything once you knew it was coming?
Yeah. I really struggled with, there was 1 year that I really struggled with it. And I read a good book, The Atomic Habit. It's a great book. But it's not as much about the habit. It was about your identity. And I was like, I'd always been taught, like, I'm not a hockey player. I'm way more than that. You're a person. But it's inevitable. It becomes who you are. Like, it's not your identity, but it's going to be who you are. It is what you are now. Like, you're Mike. You're the big dog.
I'm the talk guy.
Yeah. Everybody. And there's a comfort level that you wear that well. And now and when you go to take that off and you're gone from that, I was really afraid. And I was like, what's the point in everything else? Like what's the point now? Like, I'm never going to achieve higher than that. Like, if you wanted to go by just recognition, like, it's never going to get higher than that. And not that was a big deal. And then when I was reading that book, it talked about how if your identity isn't rigid but flexible, and I started that year, I was really having a hard time. I started going through things that I'd learned from hockey. And I was like, well, Mal, I can handle failure. I can handle success. I can walk into a room full of alpha males and be comfortable. I can take criticism. I learn. I'm coachable. I have an understanding of relationships, understanding of people. I've dealt with multi-million-dollar contracts. I've dealt with business with CBA stuff. And all of a sudden I started going through all these things that I'm like, wait, I can take all this stuff that I've learned from playing hockey and go on to the next kind of, and that's when that's when I kind of got excited. I remember I was really upset because I wasn't playing very much, and it was harder. I wasn't as good as I wanted to be, and I was getting kind of depressed about that. And it was like, oh man, this is. You kind of feel invincible until you're not, and then when you're not, it's like there's no pretending you ever can be again.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I recognized that, and then I was like, wait, this is a whole new environment. I can learn. Now I'm going to be a supporting guy. Now I'm going to be a guy that, okay, I'm dealing with emotions. Now I got to go help someone else that's dealing with emotions. When I'm not coming from it, well, I'm the captain and one of the better players on the team. I'm coming in from it, hey, I'm trying to hold on here myself. Let's do this together. Let's work together and see if we can have success. And there was a whole nother area of learning that I was like, oh, now that got exciting. Now I'm like, okay, what am I going to learn today? I'm mad at the coach. How am I going to handle that? And how am I going to deal with that in a way that's constructive and improves the situation instead of just throw my temper tantrum and feel sorry for myself. That's the only thing that saved me, because it was getting darker and harder to kind of handle that. And when I retired, I was shocked at how much I still struggled with it, even though I thought I had a handle on what everything was going to do. But it was good. I learned.
It's tough. I remember I was joking just before you came in here. I was joking out in the room with some people, a little older. Now, I'm older than you, but older.
Yeah.
And saying to them, I remember when I was a kid saying, age is just a number. And now I want to go back and apologize to all those people, because only a stupid young person would say something like
yes.
that. Joking, but not joking. Because in your head, you still feel many times like you can do so much.
Yes.
And I look at things and I think, I'm not in a morbid, like I'm going to die way, but I'm closer to the end.
Yeah, I know.
A lot closer to the end than I am at the beginning.
And isn't that
and I struggle with that right now. I don't know if I'm going through what you went through, but I'm thinking about that now, thinking, how much time do I really have left?
I know.
And how much more do I want to accomplish? And what am I going to...
Yeah, and what's the point of it all?
Yeah.
Like, really, what's the point of it all?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I struggled with that with playing hockey a lot, because I'm like, I don't save anyone's life. I don't make anyone's day better.
Yeah, you do.
Well, but I'm not like, it's not like they come to me and it's like, oh, if I could fix this for you,
right.
you'll be, or you need, your house is burning down, I could put the fire out, or
right.
Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I can make people feel an element of recognition, and people, like you said, like I'm not poo-pooing that. I'm just saying, like, it's pretty, I always joked with our guys, like, whenever anyone would get feeling kind of high on their horse, I'd be like, well, you realize we're the court jester, right? Like, when everything gets serious, the court jester is he's out of the castle in a hurry.
Yeah.
Because we're the side entertainment that's distracting everybody from what's going on in the real world. So don't ever think you're more than just the court jester, and that's the first person that's out of the castle when everything gets serious. So there is an element of that I always struggled with, but then I found there's a whole bunch more to it than that, and that's an over kind of reducing it, and that's not real.
So what does it for you now? What gives you satisfaction? Have you found a way to have that fulfillment now?
Well, I've accepted the fact I'll never ever feel that feeling of playing hockey again.
Okay.
Which was hard, because I love to compete. Like, there's an element that I love to compete and see if I can win. That's never going to come back. But I think I enjoy helping. If I feel like I can help somebody, like, I enjoy if there's an element that you can connect with someone, help with someone. I really started to like to read quite a bit, and I enjoy that, where you're like, I'm learning. And that's, if I keep trying, and I know that sounds like so simple, but if I find that I'm learning, then I'm finding that I'm doing good, and that's probably a big part of it.
Well, recently, just to that point about helping other people, we just saw each other. That's how I got you hooked into this.
Yeah.
We were at Phoenix Children's.
Yeah.
And you were there as a surprise guest of a mom.
Yeah.
Who had this daughter who has been gone through so much. Yeah. And just when she saw you, she lit up. Can you tell a little bit of that story? How that happened? Yeah,
though they reached out to me, and Leighton was her daughter, and she became a big part of the Coyotes.
Yeah.
And Carly and what their family went through was very, very difficult. And Jeremy, and when they said that they're doing something with Children's Hospital, and they're like, hey, Carly's going to be there. She was here with Leighton the last time because of COVID and everything. We're going to present her with a bear. Would you be happy? I was like jumped at the opportunity because I love Jeremy and Carly and their 3 kids, and they're just an incredible family. And that's one of those things that, when you say that hockey doesn't matter, he had the opportunity to really have an influence on their family and have the ability to help them. And they've had an equal impact on all of us. But that was one of those things that, as a dad, when you see parents that are dealing with stuff that I don't know how they deal with it, you jump at the opportunity to carry some of the load if you can and help them and make them feel, let them understand that it matters and it's important and they're important. And that was really all it was.
The significance of playing in the NHL and playing at the highest level, and now you say to someone, I'm going to Phoenix Children's to surprise somebody with a bear for a radio give-a-thon.
Yeah.
They would, to a lot of people, pale in comparison. But I can't imagine you saying no.
No.
I can't imagine that you know what I mean? That wouldn't be every bit as important. Because let's face it, the traffic getting down there, the hiding around the corner and waiting and everything else. But there's no way you'd have said no to that.
No. Well, it's Carly and their family, and it's PCH and what they do. Like, we're lucky to have PCH as a city.
I hope people never have to find that out.
Oh.
But if you ever have a child that needs to be there, you're going to kiss the ground.
Oh,
the outside of that building.
What they do I am so. I had one experience where my one daughter, we were in the hospital in Edmonton for 8 to 10 days, and it was intense, and I had a whole new element of understanding, and it was. But what they do at the Children's Hospital here is just it's incredible,
yeah.
And so, it was the Children's Hospital calling, so I'm not saying no to them, and it's Carly, so I'm not saying no to them. And if you're able to do the right thing, you do the right thing. Like that's
like, it is that simple.
Yeah, and you know what? This will sound like a name dropping. I got to be friends with Senator McCain.
Me too, for a long time.
And I love Senator McCain. And I remember we were sitting down one time. I was like, "Sir, how do you what made you so successful? Like, what is it? What's your key?" He's like, I think, Shane, you just do the right thing. And he said, and you know what the right thing is? I'm not saying you always do it. He's like, but when I've done the right thing, even if it's not popular and even if it's not right in everyone else's eyes, but I believe it's right, it's always paid off. And when I've went against what I think was right and I've done what I was kind of felt was what was supposed to do, those times cost me.
Yeah.
And he's like, so for me, he's like, I just, okay, what's the right thing to do? And I try to do it.
Let me go back to something. I'm glad you brought him up because he was so kind to me.
Oh.
When he was diagnosed with the brain cancer, he came home and he started his treatment. When his treatment was done, his people reached out to me, and he came in the studio with me, and he said, I wanted to start my journey back here.
No way.
And he made me cry.
Yeah.
But he was always so kind to me as a human being. He was just a kind man.
Oh.
But I want to go back to what you talked about in the dressing room. And it's a weird analogy, but tell me if you think it fits. When I would talk to him about his time in a POW camp, he always had a smile on his face.
Yeah.
And I asked him, how could you be in a place that injured you so badly, that treated you so horribly? How in the world can you smile about that place? And he said he made some of the deepest friendships that he'd ever made in his life, mm-hmm. and had so much respect for the people. To walk out of that atmosphere but have a good attitude about it was because of the people he was there with. Is that similar just in that way when you talk about that dressing room, those relationships are what you remember?
That's it. That is 100% it. I think we are designed to have relationship with, like, that's what we are designed for. And in those environments, not comparing in any way, but in environments where you develop real deep relationships and you cultivate them and you grow them and you see people struggle and see people succeed, that's what makes the dressing room special. And then whatever, like, I couldn't imagine what Senator McCain experience and what he got
Hell.
what those
Did he
were
ever
like.
tell you stories about
Yeah,
it?
he did. You know what? I got to meet a lot of people. I do. I get to meet so many people, and the majority of the time, probably when the same for me when they meet me, is not quite as much there as you thought. Like when you meet him, you're
I
like,
know what you're saying.
You're like, that's he's famous, and I understand who.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot that I recognize, but it's not very deep. It's
Right.
usually fairly shallow. He's the one guy that it was like, there's so much more here, and it's so real and authentic that I was floored by it. But,
I had a conversation with him. This is so off topic, but I just want to talk about this with you because you'll appreciate it. And I don't know if he told you this story, but we were talking about the First Amendment and talking about the right to speak, and we talked about burning the flag. And he said, I just have a whole different opinion on burning the flag. And he said, let me tell you a story. And there was a guy that he was in the POW camp with, and they had uniforms they had to wear. And this guy had sewn an American flag inside of his uniform. And every night before they ate dinner, they got a bowl of soup or whatever at night for dinner, they would all stand and he would open his jacket and they would say the Pledge of Allegiance. And when the captors found out that he had that in his uniform, they beat him almost to death and threw him back in the room with McCain and all of the other guys. And they nursed this guy back to health, and as soon as he was healthy enough, he sewed another flag inside his next uniform. So his analogy was, I have a completely different opinion than a lot of people do. And to be in a studio and listen to him tell those stories, I thought, all of the politics and all of the other things aside, what an amazing perspective on life that he had, and not a lot of people got to see it because they wanted to ask him about the political commentary of the day. But he had so much more to give.
Oh, it was he told me the story. My favorite. You're right. Like, he just had so much. It was so much deeper than just. He wasn't playing a game, and I feel like sometimes now we get caught. At least in politics, people get caught up in playing games. Like, how are you gonna? What's the plan?
What's the angle?
What's the angle we're playing? It was like, no, this is just who I am, and if I think this is right, I'm going to do it, and if I think it's wrong, I'm not going to do it, and unless you can convince me I'm wrong, which is going to be very difficult because I'm fairly, he was resolute in what he thought, but he would listen. Like, that was, we would sit around. I was sitting at a table the one time, and there was 6 Democrats and 6 Republicans sitting at the table, and he was barbecuing for them, and I'm sitting there, and Grant Woods was with me. Grant Woods were sitting there, and I'm just like, I don't belong in this room. I don't belong. We were outside. It wasn't even a room. It was at a table. We were outside at the up by Cornville there, and we're like, I'm like, this is crazy. And he would just be burying some Democrat, one of the senators. And actually Booker was there at and they were going at it, and then he turns to me, he's like, Shane, you know what? Unbelievable guy. His wife, and this wasn't on Booker that time, but it was someone else. He's like, oh, his wife, just the most amazing. And his kids, his son is and then I can't stand, like, why do you think this? And but, oh my goodness. And then he'd smile at me and be like, other than their policies, they're great people. Like, and I was like, it opened my eyes to this whole, like, oh wow, like, this guy's got.
He told me a story in his office in D.C. right before the inauguration of Trump in 2017 in January. I was in his office with him in D.C. and we did a television interview, and then we sat around like you were talking about. Yeah. And he said that there were 2 freshman senators on the floor, a Democrat and a Republican, arguing, debating on the floor, and McCain had gotten word that this was going on, and he went to the floor to stand behind and support the Republican senator. And Ted Kennedy had come in to stand behind the Democrat, and he said, before long, Kennedy and I are standing like this, screaming at each other on the floor, just screaming at each other on the floor. And when it was all over, Ted Kennedy and I walked off the floor together, and Kennedy went, hey, we did pretty good. He said, and that's the way the relationships used to be.
Yeah.
He said Ted Kennedy was the only person that could go on the Senate floor and rip you to pieces and then walk off the floor and convince you he wasn't talking about you. But isn't that, again, go back to hockey on the ice. Oh. It's that battle out of mutual respect. Mm-hmm. And when it's over, you shake hands in mutual respect, you go your separate ways. But next time we see each other, we're going at it again.
Yeah, 100%. That was probably, I was involved in the CBA, some of the CBA negotiations, and I got really involved with them in the 2011-12 one. And the owners were all sitting at the table, and they were, as a player, it was a negotiation. It was hard. I didn't like what they were saying. It felt like they were personally attacking me, and I was like, you don't respect me, you don't appreciate what we do, and blah, blah, blah. And it's going back and forth. And I was really mad. I was taking it really personal. And after it was all said and done, I'm walking out, and my daughter at this time this was when my daughter was in the hospital. One of them walked over to me and was like, Shane, I just wanted to see how your daughter's doing. And my first instinct was like, don't you even keep her name out of her mind. Anyways, no. No, but they asked me, and I was like, at first, and then I could tell like they were genuinely wanted to know. And all of a sudden it dawned on me like, wait a minute, when we're in that room, that's their rink, and they're going to do everything they can to make me mad and to get the best deal possible. And when we leave that boardroom, this is life, and is, and I was like, it changed I'm like, oh, okay, I don't like this, and it's going to take me a while to learn this, but I get it. You can do whatever we want, not whatever we want. But
I know what you mean, yeah.
But and then I was like, and for Senator McCain, there was the best example of it. Like, you can disagree and argue with people, and yet at the same time, you can be friends.
And he got worked up.
Oh, he
didn't pull punches. He was a guy that when it came time to argue.
I was with him when Mike Pence called and he'd been asked to be the vice president. And he called Senator McCain and asked him if it was all right. And Senator McCain was like, 100% it's all right. That man may be the president of the United States. Yeah. We defend the office, and it's the office, it's not the man. And if you have an opportunity to serve him, you serve him the best you can. Yeah. And you do everything you can because it's constitutional. And he went on about how, and he's going to need good people around him. And you have to be there. And Mike Pence was kind of trying to figure out if he wanted, like, okay, if I step into this, and he needed Senator McCain's, I should say Vice President Pence, he needed the advice from Senator McCain, who, obviously everyone knows their little beef between the two of them.
They didn't like each other.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
No, yeah. But he was like instantly like, no, this isn't about us. This is about is the country and everyone. And it's not about you. It's about everyone. So let's do that. I remember that moment where I'm like, I didn't understand it all at the time. I did. I kind of knew it because I was upset with, different things that was said about Senator McCain, and
me too.
And the family was too. And so I was like, okay. But then to see him be so generous and kind and gracious and be like, no, you need to help him, and we got to help him. And I was like, holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah, and I saw the same thing from him.
Yeah.
And it was just an amazing life. I got two more questions before I let you go because your wife's going to be angry.
Oh, no. She's good. She's good.
So, first of all, I want to talk about hockey.
Oh, yeah.
The future of hockey in Arizona and what's going on here.
Yes.
Can you give me some perspective? Because it is my hope that they settle on this something here in the East Valley, that I really believe that being somewhere like that would be such a big move for hockey in Arizona. Do you agree?
Oh, I think it would be huge. I think and when I say we, I mean the Coyotes as an organization, when I played for 5-6 different owners and 4 different general managers and 400 players. So we, as a group, made it difficult on people to be fans of the Coyotes at times because it was such a tumultuous kind of, we're leaving, we're staying, we're going, we're winning, we're losing, we're doing, like, it wasn't easy to be a Coyotes fan over from all the time that I played. And even now it's been difficult because it seems to always be going, up and down. If they get it stable and they get it in a building that's a little bit more centrally located, it's a home run. I don't care. Everybody in Canada and the North, they can yell at me all they want. It's a home run here. I understand this market and I see this market, and I believe that Gary Bettman sees the market for what it is as well. It's a home run here. It has to be done right.
Look at
That's
South
it.
Florida.
Look at Tampa. Tampa
Okay,
is the best example.
So I have a buddy that lives in downtown Tampa, and he's been there forever. Huge Lightning fan.
Of
and
course
they say, and we talked about sports, and he said Arizona has the opposite problem that we do. Hockey team, downtown, packed arena, everybody goes. Baseball team, long drive, tons of games, hard to get your family there on a weeknight and get them home.
Yeah.
We're in the exact opposite place.
Yep, exactly.
And he said that if you could get an arena, you get into a building downtown or in in the metropolitan area, nothing against Glendale. It's great for football.
Yeah, I agree.
But to get a family from downtown Phoenix or from the East Valley to have their kids come to a game and it's such a family-friendly environment on a weeknight for a game is difficult. But if you're there, you've got a much better fan base with season tickets, and it seems to be, like you said, a home run. And I'm glad you agree, because I'm a hopeful fan. You know the game.
Yeah. I believe it with all my heart. And I'm not saying that it can't work in other cities. Like people are like, what about here? I'm like, you're right. It could work there. I don't know those cities. I know this city. I know it works. I know that it would be successful. You just have to have some stability.
And it's the fastest growing county in the country.
It's crazy. And it's it's A, office space. Office space is big because that drives your whole corporate side. And that's centrally located. It has nothing to do with Scottsdale, Glendale, Phoenix, Tempe, Mesa. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with location of being centrally located. You go to the different companies that have had success and you talk to them and they will tell you it's location, location. Like, you're in the right spot, you're going to be successful. You're in the wrong spot. I'm not saying you can't have moments where you're successful, because you can, but if you want to be reliable and durable, you have to have location. And I think with all of the people from the north and all the people from Canada that come down and all the people that have been here now, the Coyotes have been here for 20, I guess, going on 27 years. There's a foundation that's started that is going to work, but you can't just... It's going to have to be stable, and it's going to have to be legit.
And from the casual fan point of view, and someone that would go to a game, and when you're in town for business or you're here with friends and someone, hey, you want to go to a game tonight? Yeah. It's a lot easier to jump a few miles down the freeway in a centrally located location than to say, we got to get an Uber, or we got to find our way to Glendale. We're going to have a couple of beers at the game. Do we really want to be driving home after that? It's Wednesday night. We got to work tomorrow. Yeah. I know that sounds silly, but for a lot of people, that decision that's made, what do you want to do? Hey, do you want to go to a game Wednesday night? When you have a lot of weeknight games, that's a big decider, especially if you're going to take the kids.
Oh, my goodness. It's reality. That's all it is. It's the reality of what life is. And that's the part that I don't mean. I mean, it's an oversimplification of it, but that's what reality is. You can't pretend to exist inside a vacuum. The team has to understand that. The league understands it. The team understands it. People have to understand it, that's the way it works. And hey, I would love to have an NHL team in my hometown. My hometown has 75 people. There's no one. Right. There's no NHL team. We would all go. We would all support it. But it just not. The reality is that doesn't work. And it's not that I'm mad that the Edmonton Oilers are not in Halkirk, but they're not. So that's the way it is.
And people aren't going to drive
all the
miles and miles to get to your hometown.
To watch a hockey game.
So speaking of that, because that's my last question, this is something we share that a lot of people don't know about you, is your love for the sport of rodeo.
Yes.
Growing up the way you did, we have a very close friend in common, Cody Custer.
Oh, yeah.
Cody taught me to ride bulls.
No way.
Yeah. Now, he wouldn't want that because I was so bad at it.
I can't believe you're crazy. If you're getting on those bulls,
But didn't you?
I rode steers, and I rode like 2 or 3 bulls that we had at home, but nothing. I got too heavy. Like, I was like 200 pounds at like 15. And the steers couldn't buck. And so, like, my buddies were riding steers, and they're like 115 pounds, and they're bucking, and they get scoring. I'm like, I can't do this. Like, steer can't buck at 200. Steers are only, 600-pound steer. I can't buck a 200-pound guy as well.
Well, I saw a picture. I think it was in your dressing room, you and Cody talking to each other.
Yeah.
as a professional athlete, now I just was a starstruck when I came here. And my stories, how I met them is kind of crazy. I moved to Arizona in 95 because I wanted to be a bull rider.
No way.
I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I love the sport so much, I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
So that's how I started someone said, I met his brother who has passed away. His brother Danny died years ago, but I met his brother Danny at a place called Mr. Lucky's down in downtown Phoenix. And I just happened to meet this guy and I said, I just want to learn. He goes, you come out to Westworld on Saturday night, my brother will teach you. And I said, who's your brother? And he said, Cody Custer. And I said, your brother's not Cody Custer. And he got mad at me. I'm not a liar. That's my brother. Sure enough, I showed up at the arena.
No way.
And walked up and said, I'm looking for Cody Custer. And he said, I'm Cody. And I said, I just want to learn the rodeo business. And I ended up running their rodeo company for a couple of years.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I did not know that. No.
I was a terrible bull rider, horrible at it. But I love that sport so much. But as a professional athlete, have got to have such respect for a world champion.
Oh, it's so funny because my family, they got bull riders, bareback riders, steer wrestlers, some saddle bronc guys. And I mean, those guys, they are a whole nother level of tough. And I was a good hockey player. Like, I'm not saying I wasn't good. I was probably maybe in the, you get into the top, my best year would have been in the top 25 maybe.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting paid if you're a top 25 rodeo guy. You have to be in the top 5 to get, your top 5 guys, you're making money. Those guys, to be world champion, to be the best at something, it's not just a little bit. You are like elite. And those guys, man.
And how far that sport's come, because Cody won the world championship in 92. And I think he set a record that year for money for the year. Yeah. At about $340,000.
Yeah.
And
now they get $1 million for winning the PBR for one event.
So that was my next question. Do you follow the PBR?
Yeah.
Do you watch?
Yeah.
I'm such a fan. I like the teams.
Oh, I know.
But
they've done such a cool of coming up with not a gimmick, but a way to draw you in. It's interesting because I think Liv is trying to do, if you watch what Liv's trying to do, they're trying to do the same thing that the PBR did a little bit. It's a different environment, but yeah.
But I think the other thing the PBR has done really well, I just like the fact we're talking about a whole different thing than hockey with you.
Yes.
But I love that the PBR has focused on the bulls.
Oh, yes.
That, like horse racing, we don't even know who the jockeys are.
Yeah.
We know the horses.
Yeah.
But in the sport of bull riding, the bulls are as famous and cheered for. That race to see who's going to be the world champion bull is as cool to watch. You got to watch the bulls' outs and the scores. And the same thing, when they crown a champion bull rider, then when they crown that bull, everybody's excited. That's a cool addition.
It is so, and I mean, it started with Red Rock and Bodacious when those guys started to, I love it when you take people to go watch bulls and they're like, oh my goodness. I was like, you know what? You can watch this bloodline of that bull. He'll come back with his head, when he comes
Bodacious.
back, Bodacious, and they had to outlaw that because you couldn't do this, and you can't. I'm like, it's such a science inside of an absolute horrific crash. It's a science. I don't know, it's.
And when Sammy Andrews retired that bull, I remember a couple of the guys, Cody and the other guys, were saying, everybody thinks that's a good thing, except now they're going to put him out to stud.
And there's going to be
in 5 years, there's going to be 5 more of them.
Exactly. That's the worst.
Yeah.
And you can see it you see that move that when they hit the ground and he comes back with his head, you go back and it's there he is. There's a Bodacious. I raise horses and I got bloodlines, and so I got a couple studs. That stuff was when I get so jazzed about all the bloodlines of Smart Chickalina, and all of a sudden you're into Mercury Cow, all these different horses and stuff, but it comes from the cattle companies, because those bulls and the way that they're bred and the way that because there's always bred for size and meat, and then now they turn them straight into athletes. Now they're just straight athletes.
And you as a professional athlete have to respect what great athletes these young guys are. Injuries in your sport, a lot of them, because it's a dangerous sport.
Yeah.
And it's coming. Yeah. And hockey players are known to play through injuries.
You
play hurt. Can't play injured sometimes, but you can play hurt.
Yeah. Bull
Those
riders
dudes,
are injured.
They are insane.
We went to the PBR. Wayne Gretzky and their company bought the PBR like years ago. So as he bought the PBR, we go to the first one of the first ones that he'd owned the PBR, and we go to it. And there's a kid, he gets hurt, and he's walking around with a limp. And we come over and we're talking to him, and they're like, "What happened?" He's like, "Oh, I broke my leg," and da 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 da. And they're like, "Oh, how long are you out for?" He's like, No, I'm riding tonight.
I'm riding tonight.
Wait, well, no, it's fractured. It's not broken. It's just fractured. But I can spur. I just gotta. Yeah. It's going to hurt when I land. Yeah. I'm like, oh, these guys are like.
And the doctors. That's the funny thing is, they're telling doctors I have to figure out a way to get a spur on my cast. Yeah. How do we?
Oh, I know.
Isn't that crazy?
They are.
Or the guys that tape their arm up because they have the dislocated shoulder and they don't want their arm to straighten out.
It's just, or they pop their, like, how many guys you see pop their like bicep and it's like rolled it right down into their wrist.
Yeah.
And they're like, or rolls it down to their elbow, and they're like, pop my bicep.
I tore my bicep.
Oh, 100%. If you're riding bulls, you probably.
But I tore my bicep lifting weights.
Oh yeah.
And I was out for 3 months.
You didn't get on a bull?
No, I didn't do anything. I lifted my bottle of water with the other hand.
There you go.
But to watch them, and that's why I love the sport so much. And I was terrible at it, but I loved it while I was involved. I'll never forget the experience. And it's those people, again, it's the professionalism, the dedication, the love they have for the sport. And it's funny to talk to people that have, like Cody has gone on, and what he does now is he coaches. He's known for his rodeo schools around the country.
Yeah.
A professional rodeo Hall of Famer and everything else and the accolades of the PBR. But he's teaching the next generation, and that's where he gets his joy, is watching these young guys learn it the right way.
Yeah. And when you ask, like, what do you do now? Like, what do you get that? There's no question. When you can pass on experience onto someone that's younger, it's always exciting. The funniest thing is that no one actually listens to like wisdom until you've actually experienced it. Mm-hmm. You may shorten your window of learning. Like, if I did something and it took me 15 tries to figure it out, and someone came along and told me, and I did it, I would still do it probably one more time, and then be like, oh, they told me how to do this, I'm going to do it their way. It's so funny that people don't like to listen. Like, it's always hilarious to me, especially bull riders and those guys, because those old guys will be like, don't do that, don't do that, and then someone will go and do it and it doesn't work, and then they learn quickly. Those guys learn by doing the wrong thing like 100 times.
100 times.
But now you see these young kids that are they're learning so fast, and Cody and Ty and those guys, what they're teaching guys. And then in every sport, it's like the kids are just so talented and so good. And they slow down. The bull riders, you watch them take video of like this bull, he plants that, he's turning here. It's like crazy. It's so fun to watch.
Who was your favorite athlete? Do you have someone in your head was your favorite athlete of all time?
I loved Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
I did. I loved, like, he was the first time when I saw an athlete that I was like, that's different than everyone else. Like, how can he do the things he could? But I'm trying to think, my favorite athlete, Bo Jackson.
That's mine.
I love Bo Jackson.
Bo Jackson's the greatest athlete of my lifetime.
Yeah. I heard that Jim Thorpe?
Yeah.
Like, I heard that before Bo was Jim Thorpe, like those guys that can do. We laugh and joke about Isaiah Simmons. I'm like, I don't know if he's good at football, but he's my favorite athlete. Like, I love watching that guy. Yeah. But those two guys, those guys are
one of my favorites. I think second only to Bo Jackson was Ray Lewis.
Oh yeah.
Because, well, first of all, he was a Miami Hurricane.
Oh yeah.
So he was a Hurricane, but he was one of those guys, kind of like you, that everything he did was for the team. He realized he was sold out to an organization.
Yeah.
Or an organization, I should say. He was sold out to the team. Yeah. And everybody on the team would follow him through a wall because they knew he'd lead them through the wall.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool thing.
It is. And that's that belief that, that's special. That's that belief in that there's an ultimate better good, and you can do stuff that, like, if you're as a group, you can be better than as an individual. And I think that's, I agree. Ray Lewis he's an intense man. You see that guy do interviews, see him do anything. It's crazy.
There's one of the, I guess, 30 for 30 is one of the ESPN special shows. that Baltimore Ravens team winning the Super Bowl, and it takes them through that year, and they got a bunch of them on the stage. And even in the laid back, he's sitting in a chair like this. You can tell he's just as intense now as he ever was.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know?
Those guys that are transcending that, you know, I don't care what sport you're in, you see it and you're like, okay, that's
special.
Yeah, you can. It's right now for us in hockey. It's you might not know anything about hockey. You come watch us play, watch our sport, and you're like, man, that Connor McDavid guy,
yeah,
he's quite a bit better than everyone else. I don't know what they're trying to do, but whatever that guy 97 is doing, he's unbelievable. And that 34, the other guy, the Austin Matthews kid, he shoots a puck, or whatever they're doing with that little block thing, he shoots it better than everybody else. Like, it's crazy when you see that special talent.
It's fun.
It is.
Even,
really
and I'm sure even as a professional athlete, you got to respect it.
Oh,
even
yeah.
in an opponent, you got to respect what they're able to do.
Yeah, like there was that feeling when you'd be going against somebody and you'd feel their strength. Like, you'd be going down the ice and someone would come across and they'd lean on your head chair or something. You'd be like, who's that? Like, I gotta keep my eye on who was that just leaned on me there, or someone to shoot a puck, or someone skate by you, and you'd be like, oh my goodness, okay, that guy's. And
anybody that's never been to a game that watches it on TV, it's great to watch on TV, but the intensity and the sound of the impact into the boards or any other, the impact because of the speed of the game. I don't know how you guys walk away from some of those hits and you just keep playing. Yeah. But you can hear it everywhere in the arena. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
That is. It's so funny because I'd always joke, like, if you just get missed and they hit the boards and it sounds like they just missed you and they just crushed the boards, that was worse because now the fear of that hit actually would linger. If they hit you, it was like, oh, that hurt, but I'm okay. It's over. But now you're like, man, he almost killed me. Yeah. Now I got a fear. I'm worried about it. I'm like, oh,
it's
great.
Like running in traffic.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, listen, I appreciate all this time. I have no idea how long we went, but I could talk to you forever.
Oh, likewise,
man. This is great. I appreciate the time. You know how much we appreciate you being still here in the Valley and your time with us with the Coyotes, but just to be able to share some of the stuff people didn't know, I can't thank you enough, I've been obviously a fan since you and I met the first time, and it's when you asked, I'm like, yep, I can make time for this. This will be fun. That was fun because I thought, well, he's not gonna. Is he really going to show up? And you're like, no, I'm doing it. I said, all right, we're going to nail you down. Well, I appreciate the time.
Good luck with this too, because it's
so much fun.
It's such a good idea because this is home for me now, and the state of Arizona is unique, and I think the history that's here. It was funny. My favorite movie growing up, which I had no idea, I'd never been to Arizona, was Tombstone.
Yeah, great movie.
Oh, a great movie. I would always joke and laugh about it because it was my favorite movie growing up, and so then to now be here is never in my wildest dreams I think I'd end up in Arizona.
Well, I've gotten you now and Gonzo. You guys got to get me Larry.
Yeah, Larry's got to get that. Larry's got to get on there and get.
We got to get him here.
Yeah, I agree.
So you got to tell him he's got to get on. He's got to get on the podcast. Put in a good word for me, Shane.
I'll shoot him a text.
All right, I appreciate it.
All right,
thank you.
Thanks so much.
Shane Doan.